words used as derogatory or disrespectful during the meeting, and parties agreed to not to interrupt one another during their time slot. I, as a chair, reserve the right and the privilege to halt the meeting at any point. Also, the parties, if they feel uncomfortable, they have the same right. And they have a right to call it a 5-minute break if they feel to do so. So, without further ado, I will invite Mr. Mufassil Islam. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished guests, and welcome the great Sheikh Dr. Umer Qadri, great slave of Allah. Welcome. And also, I welcome my friends, my Christian friends who are like my brothers, and I also welcome my friends in humanity. First of all, a little corrections, I am the chairman of OLA, not just simply a member. And secondly, this is, when it's a derogatory statement, you may find offensive towards your belief, but no personal offense should be meant. That's what we should make it clear. The main purpose of this dialogue was I have failed thus far to get a constructive response from Muslim community all over the world regarding questions which resonated in my mind for a long time, and which in fact pushed me out of Islam. Because those questions were never answered. I tried my best to find answers, but the answers were not there. Whenever I tried to get an answer, I was harassed, abused, threatened, insulted, ostracized. That's what happened all the times. Now I'll give you a bit of a situation that I'm going through at the moment. And my friend is going to send me to speak up a bit, but unfortunately, I must apologize in advance. I have this bad cough, and probably I don't know whether that's a curse. Now let's move on to the situation I'm facing at the moment. As you all know by this time that I'm an apostate from Islam, a murtad from Islam. My situation. I was given a derogatory name by the Muslim community worldwide, and that name is going around. You know my name is Mufassil Islam. I still carry that name. That's my right to have that name, because that name was given by my father. Regardless of the fact that I don't believe in Islam, but I do have all the legal rights to carry that name, and I will carry that name forward. Because all my life activities are recorded by that name. So I don't want to lose that. But I was given the derogatory name, Nastik, that means apostate. Mufassil is my name, Mufa. Mufa is the shortened name of my first name. This is considered derogatory in Bengali terms. So they gave me a derogatory name, and if you Google this name, or even if you go for Facebook, you will see people liking this site, these pages, innumerable number of pages, tens and thousands of them. I receive death threats on a daily basis. My wife, my mother, my sister, my cousins, close friends, and Muslim neighbors would, even in Belfast, ostracize me. Even in Belfast. And these are all well documented. If anyone is going to question that, I can always be forthcoming with evidences. Made videos about me, sending me death threats from all over the world. And those death threat videos are still on social media. And they are liked by thousands of people. The last video I counted, unfortunately the projector is not working, was viewed by 500,000 people, liked by 47,000 people, and commented up by 12,000 people calling for my death. Those videos are still online, circulating. You can all verify that. They harassed me day and night by making caricatures of me as a beggar, a paid Christian Zionist guru. I have a schizophrenic son, and a fat son because of curse from Allah. They made videos of my sons, and say those are well curses from Allah. Those videos you can see, those videos are well circulated, not supported by fringe few, as we always hear, but by thousands, and you will not see even a handful of Muslims protesting those videos. My wife left me because I was a characterless man and a girl, and had girls wearing niqab living in Saudi Arabia, telling others that I had affairs with them when I never lived in Saudi Arabia. So these are all deceptions which they are using. Made voice records of me, allegedly having pornographic talks with girls over phone, when anyone who knows me would know that was not my voice, because my voice is well known because I have 1.5 million online followers worldwide. I've been to 80 countries all over the world preaching Islam. So it was, trust me, it was not a happy moment when I left Islam. There were Muslims who bought my book via PayPal, destroyed the copies online, and then reclaimed money back from PayPal, saying they never received a copy, as I didn't send the book by tracker number using the loophole in the system. Went to eBay and made over more than 100 individual negative comments on my book without even reading a copy, as I had not sold 100 copies within the first 2 days. Held demonstrations and mass gatherings calling for my death all over Bangladesh. Spread rumors saying I was never even a Muslim, when my Islamic preaching life is well documented. I was a regular speaker on Islam TV. I wrote on Sharia in the leading Bangladeshi newspaper called Daily Star. And also I debated, even in Ireland, the most famous atheist in Ireland, Michael Nugent, defending Islam. I also addressed the FIL, the oldest philosophical society in the world, defending Islam and defending the prestige of the prophets after the infamous YouTube video about the life of Muhammad. It spread rumors saying that I was never even a good Muslim, even if I was. It spread rumors that I was doing all this against Islam simply because my visa to the UK was running out when I became a British citizen many years ago. And such posts are not like one or two, in thousands. You can all Google that and you will see people are making videos, and they're not in the fringe view, as we always hear. And now, today, for the first time, for the public, what is this? This is a British passport. Shall we all agree? Shall we all agree? Yeah. Right. I was told that I'm doing it because I wanted an asylum in the United Kingdom.
When was it issued?
Sorry?
When was it issued?
When was it issued? This is renewed passport. We have any problem, just ask the United Kingdom Guard Authority or Immigration. Please do that. If you have any question, please do that. I became a British citizen 14 years ago. And I became a permanent resident 18 years ago. I came to this country 24 years ago, just for the record. Right. You can see the suspicion there probably. It spread rumors that I was doing against Islam simply because my visa was running out of the UK. And they openly instigated harassment so that I can have an early heart attack, as many of them know that I'm a cardiac patient. They forbade selling food to me from Muslim suppliers, and even here in Belfast, they told their Bangladeshi customers not to keep relationship with me, and the Bangladeshi shop on Umer Road turned into hatred preaching central command against me. And these are all well documented. If anyone wants to sue me, sue me. And then meetings were held about my apostasy from Islam in several parts of Northern Ireland, and all snapped ties with me except two very close friends who consider themselves agnostics now. I was told that I would never be able to get a job, as I was a thief and no office would be allowed to have me, and I'm living hand to mouth at the moment, when they claim that I'm getting paid. My Christian friends here, is there anyone who can tell me I'm being paid to say here, please speak now? My new girlfriend has now lost all her relatives for having contacts with me. I cannot even see my son, as simply as told him to grow up as a human being and not worry about religious identity now, as he is too young. I believe with all my heart that Islam is a destructive cult, it's a destructive death cult, and it has all the hallmarks of being a destructive cult, death cult. You can all Google or even read famous scholarly writings about destructive cult and death cult. Islam has all the hallmark. It's a mousetrap. You can go in, you cannot go out. And also, even if you are born as a Muslim, then still you cannot get out. Because I was born in a Muslim country. I don't know how many of you are here born and brought up in a Muslim country. I was born and brought up in a Muslim country. I am a 50-year-old man. Half of my life was lived in the East, and half of my life I have lived in the West. I know the differences very well. Bangladesh is a country where 80% of the people believe in Sharia law, and 75% of the Muslims don't even speak Arabic. That's the good side of it, because they really don't know Islam. Because 75% when they don't even speak Arabic, I can assure you from my years of experience of preaching Islam and having grassroots level connection in many countries with millions of followers worldwide, I can tell you, most of the Muslims don't even know a few things. So that's why when I'm talking about those things, they were surprised and shocked as equally as I was. Now we can say, how come all of a sudden you woke up to this fact? Because when you are focusing on something, you take it as Islam is a religion of peace. But suddenly, you see that when you talk for peace and you get hatred. This happened when in 2015 Paris terrorist attack. When I condemned that openly, I had hundreds and thousands of Muslims telling me that I was a sell-off. I took the devil out of the bag. I didn't have the right to defame my Muslim brothers. It's a cultish religion, and thank God I'm out of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for timekeeping as well. So now Dr. Sheikh Umer Qadri, and please leave the questions until the end of the session.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful. Ladies and gentlemen, can I greet you first with the Islamic greeting of peace? If you know the reply, please do reply loudly, don't be shy. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you all. That's what I just said in Arabic. It is a pleasure for me to be here, all the way from Dublin. I am here in capacity as the chair of the Irish Muslim Peace and Integration Council. I came aware of Mufassil Islam a few months ago when I was informed by one of my friends who lives in Belfast about the concerns that Mufassil had. And I, at that time, told this friend that I'm willing to meet him and discuss with him and all the concerns he has to kind of have a dialogue with him about it. It so happens that due to my busy schedule, it never materialized. And a few weeks ago, I was once again reminded by this friend about Mufassil Islam, and I was reminded and told about a particular post on Facebook where he invited Muslims from Northern Ireland to engage with him. I accepted that invitation even though it wasn't addressed to me. I accepted it because I believe that the most important thing to do is when you have a division, when you have hatred, when you have an atmosphere where there is no positivity, there's only negativity, and there is anger, there are grievances, I believe that the best thing to do is to meet and have a dialogue and have a discussion. So we agreed that this will not be a debate, this is going to be a dialogue and a discussion. Can I first say that I, as a theologian, an Islamic theologian, strongly condemn the behavior and the attitude and the reaction of some of the Muslims that Mufassil Islam, has faced. I believe that those actions are not right, are not correct, and I said I condemn them. And I understand when he says that he has questions about Islam, he has concerns about Islam. And previously, as you've just said, that he was a Muslim preacher, and I think it's important to understand the difference between a preacher and between a scholar. Anyone can be a preacher. Anyone can preach about Islam. You don't need to have qualifications for that. You don't have to study. You don't have to have formal schooling for that. As long as you believe in something, you can start to preach it and propagate it. But to become a scholar of something, you have to formally get the qualifications, attain the degree, and to become an imam or a sheikh, at least it requires a person to study 7 years. It takes 7 years for a person to actually understand, and then even he, I believe, is not in a position to actually be in a position to give verdicts. It's another training that you receive as a mufti, as an assistant in the iftar, in the recent department. I believe that when he said that he had questions about Islam, and he was preaching to people that Islam is a religion of peace, but there were certain questions that bothered him and he did not get the answer. I believe strongly that he is not the only person who's gone through that phase. Many Muslim leaders have gone, many Muslim scholars, in fact, when you study, you go through a phase where you actually start questioning. The great thing about Islam is that it is a religion of rationality. Islam is a religion that, and when I talk about Islam, ladies and gentlemen, please, let it be clear. I'm not talking about the Islam of ISIS. I'm not talking about the Islam of Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Taliban. I'm talking about the Islam that is followed by the majority of the Muslim world. I'm not here to talk about, because the very interesting thing is that those people that believe Islam to be a violent religion, those people that believe Islam to be a problematic religion, that does not have any human rights, that actually condemns human rights, where there is no religious freedom, and where you as an apostate can be killed, most of these people actually have something in common with ISIS, I believe. And that is, they have the same understanding of Islam like ISIS, because ISIS believes that as apostates you must be killed. There must be a death penalty. But I will today, in my discussion, I'm going to prove from Islamic primary sources, which is the Quran, and which is the Sunnah, the Hadith, the prophetic actions. I'm going to try to prove today that in Islam there is a concept of religious freedom. Islam motivates Muslims to be not only those that adhere to religious freedom, but also propagates the concept of human rights and establish a society where there is pluralism. I strongly believe that, and I believe that many Muslims get this inspiration from the Quran and Sunnah. And let me also be clear that I also have been tarnished. I also have been the victim of abuse by people that either are supporters of ISIS, that would say to me that, you know, you are a traitor to Islam. But at the same time, I've also been, most of my experience of going through racism, discrimination, and Islamophobia is by those that believe Islam to be an evil religion, and therefore they have the right and justification to attack me verbally or physically, or attack other Muslims alike. And I think that also is the same kind of extremist mentality which we have to avoid. We are living in a society where not everyone shares not only the same skin, but also not the same ideology. What makes this society great that we live in, the West, is that here we can have a plural society where everybody is free to believe what they believe in, as long as they do not damage the harmony and the tranquility in the society. I myself have also debated with Michael Nugent. I myself have also been, as I said, a victim of the abuse. But today, my purpose of coming here is that, you know, even if you kind of today understand, and if Mufassil also understands that not every Muslim believes that in Islam there is a death penalty for apostates. There are Muslim scholars that actually speak up for human rights, speak up for religious freedom, and they get this inspiration by the Quran, by the primary sources of Islam. And that is something that I'm going to discuss with you today. Thank you very much. I hope this is going to be a fruitful discussion and dialogue, and that we, through this discussion, can eliminate the distance that we have, and can get rid of the negativity and the hatred that we have. And at least, even if by the end of it we do not agree with each other's ideology, but we should agree on one thing, and that is our common humanity, respect and acceptance of each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Umer Qadri. First of all, I really congratulate you. At least you made an endeavor to come here. There are 1.8 billion Muslims around the world, and Dr. Umer Qadri is one of them. One of them. Something is wrong here. One. Of the 1.8 billion Muslims, I can go on citing you the names of the greatest scholars in the Islamic world, who will agree with me when I say apostates should not only, must be killed. And some of them will be a bit flexible. They will say you can leave Islam, but hey, you cannot criticize Islam. Because if you criticize Islam, in fact you're waging war against Allah. And some of them will say, okay, that apostate can be killed if he is under the Muslim governance. This is the way, this is the situation. I think Dr. Umer Qadri will have to agree to that. Coming to a scholar, I might not have as many as academic degrees my dear brother may have here, but I must remind him the definition of a scholar by Islamic standards does not have to be by the academic degrees, because when it comes to Muhammad's time, they didn't have academic schools to teach Islam. And the famous Muslim scholar I think everybody would know the name is Maulana Maududi. He is the founding father of Jamaat Islami, the biggest Islamic political party in the world. He is the father of many Islamic scholars who have run Islamic education centers worldwide, whose brainchild is the Medina University, whose brainchild is many Islamic institutions funded by Saudi Arabia. He never had an academic degree to his credit. He is considered one of the greatest Islamic scholars in the Muslim world. I did, on the other hand, have a master's in law, which is Islamic law in the emphasis, and I was doing a PhD of the third year in Muslim law and blasphemy. Now, coming to the issue of how to treat the apostates, as I said, out of 1.8 billion, extremely exception, and as far as I know, I am the only Bangladeshi man of Bangladeshi origin, British citizen, who has this opportunity of debating an Islamic scholar after leaving Islam. Because I will be off with my head in any of the Muslim worlds if I go. Anywhere. I will challenge Dr. Umer al-Qadri here to tell me the name of a single city in any of the Muslim majority or Muslim significant number of Muslims live there where I can go and have this dialogue. Impossible. And Dr. Umer al-Qadri knows it very well. So at this pace, if you want to make a reformation of the religion, you will need not only 1400 years, you will need 14,000 years to come to a situation where you can be in a talking situation to any other Islamic scholar. So something is wrong here, my friend. Something is definitely wrong. And that wrong goes back to the root of Islam. Now, my brother here can come up with any kind of reformative apologetic arguments. I have probably heard all of those before. And when somebody preaching Islam for 33 years, he is not going to do it unless he had it in his heart to know the religion since the age of 16. So 16, I might not have 7 years of academic degree, but I have 33 years of experience going around the world to 80 countries, having followers in 80 countries and living them. There is not a single Bangladeshi who doesn't know me. I'll be surprised. So to know that I don't have the academic qualifications, maybe I don't, but at the same time I do have the respect. Now let's go on to the issue of the Quran. We will have to concentrate on the Quran. What does the Quran say? First of all, my brother here said, peace, I greet you with the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum, right? That means peace be unto you. I'm sorry, my dear brother, this is not an Islamic greeting. Rather, this greeting was stolen from Jesus. Jesus says, peace be unto you. Is there a Christian pastor here or Christian? Can you agree with me? Yeah. Right. So Jesus said, peace be unto you. So when a murtad asks for peace be unto you, would you be telling me the same? Assalamu alaikum. I doubt it. Because Surah 3, verse 56 says, and as for those who disbelieved, I will punish them with severe punishment in this world and the hereafter, and they will have no helpers. So that's what you were looking for. So there is no way a Muslim can, in fact, ask for peace for non-Muslims. It's absurd. Now let's go on. About the complete code of life. The surah should be the complete book. Let's not go for interpretations. And if you want to do for interpretations, you can go up to Tabi'in. That's what it is. And he talked about Islamic State not being the Islam of Islamic State. I will be surprised if my brother here can cite an example which Islamic State had no basis in Islamic jurisprudence, especially in Quran and Hadith. I will be surprised. And I will be surprised if that cannot be exemplified unless we are engaging immense mental gymnastics to somehow find a different meaning. I will be extremely surprised. Because Islamic State, whatever they are doing, almost have all examples in the lives and teachings and instructions of the man we know as Muhammad. Now, being Quran the complete instructions book for manual for a Muslim, I will say the problem is with Islam, not with Muslims. The problem is with Islam. When you can say, you don't follow the book, then it's your problem. No. When 1.8 billion people, vast majority, not some, I didn't hear for some. My brother here said some Muslims. No, I'm connected. Even every page of my channel has 100,000 plus followers. Every second I get an email. Every second I get a Viber message. So I can tell you, all of them are saying what I'm telling you, that they are harassed, they are abused, they are beaten up, they are blah, 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 this goes on. Even in England, they're scared. So now, as far as the complete code of life, it goes. I will give you a few examples. So this book, something is wrong with this book, this teaching, that's why it is producing terrorists in the highest numbers, silent sympathizers in highest numbers. Now, if any of the Christians or agnostic or atheists here hear that in the name of unity, in the name of Jesus, somebody is going and shooting, you will see thousands of Christians here will be on their feet and say, this is not in the name of my Jesus. Because Jesus said, one who lives by the sword will die by the sword. When Muhammad said, Jesus, the sword is under, heaven is under the sword. There's immense difference. It's a travesty. It's a travesty to say that Jesus and Muhammad had the same mission. Jesus didn't care for this kingdom. Muhammad did. Muhammad said that he dreamt of this dominance from one end to the other. So I'm not going to buy the fact that they have the same mission. There has no match. And it's the biggest travesty. They were the same prophets of the same God. This is the biggest lie we have been told. So there is something wrong with this teaching. If you say this is something have to do with the money, because Muslim world, they are poor, what about history? If you go back to history, we will see immense examples of apostates being persecuted. The so-called Islamic Golden Age, the greatest Islamic scholars we know as Al-Razi, Al-Biruni, they were all, in fact, vehement critics of Islam. If you have any problems, please let me know. I will give you immense references to their writings. And many of their writings were burned. Many of them were persecuted. Many of them were killed. And in the name of Islam, we have immense expeditions where apostates were killed, forceful conversions made, and one of them is Tamerlane. Tamerlane attacked India and raped thousands of Muslim women, women and converted them to Islam. And they were so horrified, they jumped into fire not to get raped. This is called Satidaho. That's the origin of Satidaho. Now about the punishment of Murtad. Soon after Muhammad's death, there was a war called the War of the Rida War. And during the Rida War, also known as the War of Apostasy, were a series of military campaigns launched by Caliph Abu Bakr against rebel Arabian tribes during 632 and 633, just after Muhammad's death. Abu Sulaiman Khalid bin Walid was a companion of Muhammad. He is noted for his military tactics and powers and commanding the forces of Medina. Muhammad and forces of immediate successors was Rashidun Khalif, Abu Bakr and Umar Khalif, Umar of Khattab. He was the champion of the apostasy wars when he slaughtered countless Arabs for trying to leave Islam after the death of Muhammad. We are going back to the history, my friends. History. Soon after and during the time of Muhammad. Malik was a chief of some of the distinction, a warrior noted for generosity. I'm talking about a man named Malik. And a famous poet. Bravery, generosity, and poetry were the three qualities most admired among the Arabs. And during the lifetime of Muhammad, he had been appointed as a tax collector. During the Rida Wars, the apostasy war I was talking about, which is soon after Muhammad's death, when Abu Bakr, Muhammad's closest companion, was the caliph, which broke out in Arabia. After his death, Muhammad, Abu Bakr sent his most influential general, Khalid bin Walid, who is known in Islam as the Sword of Allah, and you will see many of the Muslims carrying this name, Khalid, and into Najd with 4,000 men, and to submit to the tribes of surrounding areas. Malik was guilty of his acts against the state of Medina. After the death of Muhammad, he broke in open revolt against Medina. As soon as Malik heard of the death of Muhammad, he gave back all taxes to his tribesmen. Khalid was called by Abu Khalid to explain the matter. Khalid killed Malik and raped his wife same night and declared her his wife. Where does it resemble? Where does it come from? It comes from Muhammad himself, because he did the same to Safiya, Jawhara, Raihana. He killed Safiya's husband, newly married husband, Kinana, burned his chest and asked for the loot, asked for the treasure. And the same thing happened to Jawhara, Raihana. How can any woman agree to marry her husband's killer, her father, on the same night? I think you have to be insane to believe that. Khalid bin Walid was simply following the footsteps of his beloved Prophet Muhammad. Now you can say Abu Bakr dismissed him. Abu Bakr did not dismiss him for that. Abu Bakr dismissed him because there was a saying that Khalid bin Walid in fact killed Malik when in fact probably he was not an apostate. That was the reason. The proof was Khalid bin Walid was never punished for that rape. Khalid bin Walid was taken back into his position by the second prophet Umer al-Khattab. So I can go on all night, my friends, and I'm sorry, but time might not allow me to explain. Now let's go for the situations in Bangladesh. Recently, as you all know, dozens of Bangladeshi online activists got killed. Dozens. And they were not making videos like me. They were not giving up references like me. They were just simply saying Muhammad was a rapist. And he gave an example and said, if he was not, argue back. Dozens of them got killed. Dozens. So if anyone's telling me that I can say what I'm saying that in any Muslim country you are in your dreamland, and if this for lack of money, how come there's no freedom in Saudi Arabia? They're not poor. If you said there's lack of education, how can Malaysia? The Malaysian Deputy Minister a few days ago said, arrest the atheists, punish them under the criminal law. So you tell me, this has nothing to do with Islam. I'll be surprised. It's the biggest travesty, biggest lie. Now you can say all those apologetic arguments, my dear brother, sitting in a non-Muslim majority country, sitting among the Christian folks, sitting amongst the people who do not believe in organized religion. You will dare not say that in any Muslim world. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. And the examples of us, the tolerance that we are showing here, after relentless attacks on the common citizens here, who never committed any crime. Manchester attack. Today there's a church attack, knife attack. If you go to other parts of the world, one attack after attack, Paris attack. What about open door policy by Germany? Germany didn't do any harm, and they went in and killed them, detonated, took up trucks on them. This has nothing to do with Islam. Yes, this has plenty to do with Islam. Because Muhammad himself didn't tolerate any kind of insult towards him. Even writing poetry triggered hatred from him, and he even instructed killing of poets for that. So if you have said nothing to do with Islam, then I must suggest, my dear brother, to go into details, and if you want me, I can go on explaining. These are the countries in the map where outlaw apostasy is blasphemy. You see, this is the map, and if you match the maps of the Muslim world, they will almost match the same map. So if you insult, the question is, how do you insult Muhammad? How do you insult? You can go and criticize Jesus anywhere here. They will not be off with your head. But here they will. Now you can say insult. What constitutes insult? Muslims will go to war even for the honor of a strand of the beard of Prophet. Even for a strand of the beard. Example, the famous Hazrat Bal Mosque incident. This has nothing to do with Islam. The Hazrat Bal incident in 1963, 1964 in Pakistan, what did it? West Pakistan, India, and modern-day East Pakistan, Bangladesh. My dear brother has his ancestors from Pakistan. I must suggest, please check your country's history again, because that's where I was born, and I think I've had pretty more experience, at least in that field. In 1964, when it was alleged that the strand was stolen from that Hazrat Bal Mosque, which has nothing to do with Hindus living in Bangladesh. Nothing to do. 50,000, on record, 50,000 Hindus were slaughtered because allegedly a Hindu stole that strand. And if you say this has nothing to do with Islam, I'll be shocked. A district called Khulna, if anybody on the live watching video, a district called Khulna was a Hindu majority district in Bangladesh. Overnight, it became a Hindu minority district in Bangladesh since that incident. What will constitute insult? Poetry, because Muhammad killed more than 25 poets for allegedly insulting. Even half-blind people were killed. Even women were killed for allegedly insulting the honor of the Prophet. Wow, how can Allah be so touchy that if you make caricature of him, he goes off the hill? How can a prophet who died 1400 years ago, you are saying, can be so bothered about one Mufassil Islam calling him names even? How can that even be insulting? How come the patience of Muslims, the result of the Muslims is so minimal that I have to wait to get somebody from another country to come and sit down here and have a dialogue? When I made that open post for Belfast Islamic Centre primarily, Belfast Islamic Centre until today didn't have the courtesy to respond to my email because they are not bothered. That is the problem. They are not bothered. I tried to knock on their doors to have a dialogue. They never given bother. It's always conspiracy theory. Because the conspiracy theory is from the bread and butter of this religion. Because this religion started with deception and ended with battle. Muhammad didn't stop after conquering Mecca. He went on warring. And the Quran is documented in such a way, the chronological order of the Quran is messed up in such a way, the timeline order, that ordinary readers will not be able to decipher the Quranic revelation timeline. Because there's no such thing, in fact, in real sense. This is Meccan Surah, this is Medinan Surah, because there are many Meccan Surah, which is Medinan verses, and many Medinan Surahs as Meccan verses. My dear brother knows it very well. But if you want to come up with apologetic verses, like there is no compulsion in religion, think again. Those are the times when Muhammad was just new, having no state. Soon after Surah Baqarah, Surah Imran, and all the Surah Maida, you can go on forever. But I will tell you, to judge Muhammad about the ultimate purpose of his life, which you can find from Surah 9. You can say there are 114 surahs in Quran. How come Surah 9 is the main surah? How come it explains Muhammad's intention? Very clear. In the Revelation timeline, out of 114 surahs, Surah 9 is in fact Surah 113. You're talking about insulting? I will tell you what is insult. I will tell you how much you can bear. If you're worried about, you're worried about a cartoon, you're worried about, what about Quran getting Trinity wrong? Quran got Trinity wrong, and the Christians here are still allowing you to recite that barbaric book here. It got the Trinity wrong. It's a disgusting understanding to say Jesus is the Son of Allah. When Christians do not have that understanding of Trinity, which your Quran is, that is insult. And an insult to say Jesus and Muhammad are of the same mission. How come they are still tolerating you and accepting your religion to be preached here? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mufassil, for that. Well, to be honest with you, I got quite confused because as far as I'm concerned, I understand that this dialogue is about apostasy in Islam and not about, at the same time, blasphemy, at the same time whether Islam is peaceful or violent, at the same time about the character of the Prophet Muhammad. I think we need to really focus on one point. We need to focus on what does the Quran say, what does the Hadith say, what does the tradition say about apostasy. But I will still answer those questions. I'll still answer the questions. The fact that, the question, Assalamu alaikum, is a Christian greeting. Well, it is not a Christian greeting. If you ask Archbishop of Canterbury what greeting is this, he'll tell you, well, it happens to be a Jewish greeting, also a Christian greeting, but also an Islamic greeting. It is an Abrahamic greeting, but it's common among the Christian faith, the Jewish faith, and the Islamic faith. My dear friend talked about how, as Muslims, they differ with Christianity. I think that is not the purpose of the debate, to create more misunderstanding between Christians and Muslims. If you want to know how Muslim-Christian relations are, I would say, look at the Pope. If you are a Catholic, look at his treatment, his understanding, and his engagement with the Muslim world. Or look at Archbishop of Canterbury. Look at him, how he treats the Muslims, how he understands Islam. In fact, a recent study, which, by the way, in a meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, he discussed this. We were in a meeting, and there were some religious leaders together in London, and we were talking about violence, religious motivated violence. And he brought up, and we were talking how people create a perversion of religion and take verses out of context. And he actually mentioned that this has happened in Christian history. This is not specific to Islam alone. In fact, the rabbi who was there mentioned that this also has happened in the Jewish tradition. People have taken words out of context also and used that to justify the violence. And it was the Archbishop who then referred to a study which you can Google up, which says that the Bible is more violent than the Quran. In terms of text analysis. In terms of text analysis. And you can Google it up. It is a study. It was done between. But that does not mean in any way that Christianity is a violent religion. I don't believe so. That does not mean Judaism is a violent religion. That does not mean that Islam is a violent religion. I don't think any of how people were killed in Bangladesh. Well, I am not going to judge this religion by how Muslims in Bangladesh are living. I'm not going to judge Christians by looking at the Crusaders, how they killed people in Spain. I'm going to judge religion by the essence, by the text, by the scripture. I look at it, and I look at the practical demonstration of that religion by Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. So let us go to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Prophet Muhammad, how did he treat those that abused him? I will quote you, I'll mention an authentic narration here. Some people, they refer to Muhammad. Muhammad, by the way, means the most praised one. Some people, they were talking about him, and they talked about him, and they referred to him as Muzammam, which means, which is the opposite of the most praised one, the most condemned one. And certain Muslims, they quite, felt it, they didn't feel right with it, and they went to the Prophet and they said, "O Prophet of God, some people talked about you. They committed blasphemy. They said the most condemned one, and they did so in a way to show their hatred towards you. And they disrespected you. What should we do?" And you know what the Prophet said? He said, "What did they say?" He said, "Muzammam." And he smiled and he said, "Well, they were talking about Muzammam. I'm not Muzammam." He just said, why would you do something? And I think that is the kind of approach as Muslims we should have when people, whether it is Jylanden Posten in Denmark, whether it is Charlie Hebdo in France, I think when people make caricatures, as Muslim a scholar, I think we should ignore it. I mean, there is really no point of getting angry at it. We should just ignore it. And that is something unfortunate that hasn't happened, because the experience of the Muslims that you have seen is that they reacted to it in a way that I believe they, as Muslims, we must more react like that when atrocities are committed in the name of Islam. And let me tell you, I'm not the only one saying this. I'm not the only one that condemns a death penalty in any way, and that believes that there is no death penalty in Islam for apostates. I'm not the only one. Let this be known, that the most prestigious seat of learning in the Islamic world is the Al-Azhar University, where every year thousands and thousands of Muslim scholars are graduated from. That prestigious university and seat of learning for the past at least 1,000 years says very categorically that there is no death penalty for apostates in Islam. Simple as that. Now, also when we talk about the attacks in Manchester, my brother, the attack in Manchester or the attack in Spain, extremely condemnable. We are appalled at it. Muslims are appalled at it. But do you know, the same people that commit these atrocities are the people that kill far more, thousands and thousands of Muslims in Iraq, thousands and thousands of Muslims in Syria, and in other Muslim majority countries. Why is it that you don't talk about that? We Muslims are the victims of these extremists. And instead of helping them, supporting them, by claiming that that is what Islam is, you should be joining hands. You should be uniting with those that believe Islam does not believe in that death penalty. Islam stands for humanity. Islam stands for peace and unity. And that is the only way to make a difference. Also, in regards to radicalization, I have been to the States for 3 weeks with a number of academics, and we were there for a program. The whole program was supported by the State Department, and it was all about religious motivated violence. And we were, in fact, countering violent extremism. It was about countering violent extremism. And we all engaged, and we all we're meeting academics, government agencies, etc., to find out this extremism that there is, what is causing it, which, and we came to the conclusion, this is the various different studies by various different universities, that the radicalization that you see, most of it is not religious motivated. Most of it, there are other factors that contribute to it. Political, social, economical, and of course, religious motivated violence, we call that because religion does play a role, but that role is very small compared to the other motives. But at the same time, I think it is important that we combat that. It is important to counter that religious motivated violence. That religious motivated violence is due to the perversion of the faith, due to the misunderstanding of the faith. And that is a great battle within Islam that we as Muslims at the moment are actually fighting. We are fighting a war against these extremists that are perverting our faith. Where there is perversion of faith. We are doing that academically. We are doing that intellectually. There are hundreds and hundreds of books written against ISIS. There are fatwas, Islamic verdicts being issued against these extremists. And I think it is important that we do not look at just the sensational media when we want to know what Muslims are doing about it, but actually take the effort to engage with Muslims, sit down with Muslims. You have got an Islamic center in Belfast here. I'm sure if you go and you'd like to meet with them, they would be happy to welcome you in the Islamic center. Okay, they may not have accepted the invitation of Mufassil, but I can understand their perspective because I've looked at some of the videos of Mufassil and I've been quite shocked and I had to review my position of coming here or not. I've seen him, for example, spitting on the Quran. I've seen him using, French, when he talks about religion, he talks about these people, and I think it's important that when we criticize, criticism is not an issue, but we need to do that in a respectful way. And if people find that offensive, and because of that they do not accept invitations, you can't really blame them, can you? But I'll be happy to facilitate a meeting between the brothers of Northern Ireland in here. And before I continue, can I ask Brother Tariq to please give me my Quran, the red Quran, please? Jazakumullah khair. Because I'm going to talk about apostasy in Islam. That's what we're here about. We're not here to talk about peace, whether Islam is violent or not, blasphemy. We can do so. I'm willing to travel again to talk about that particular thing. But now we are talking about blasphemy in Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, Muslims understand their religion from this book. This is the primary source. And in order to understand this book, Muslims, they refer to the Ahlul Ilm, the ulama, the scholars. And let me tell you, what does this book really say about religious freedom? Because that's what apostasy is related to. That, what about, one of the verses which he quoted? Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 256. The Quran says, there is no compulsion in religion. Surely the guidance has been evidently distinguished from error. Here the Quran says that there is no compulsion in religion. But my dear friend said, but what about Surah Tawbah, which was revealed later on? He mentioned that what about other surahs? And he says that Surah Tawbah supersedes this commandment. Let me quote it. Let me quote in front of you. What does the Quran say? The Quran says, chapter number 10, verse number 99. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ, and I'm going to just mention in English, and had God, Allah, so willed, certainly all inhabitants on the earth would have believed. God is revealing, Allah is revealing in the Quran that why would you kill apostates? Why would you force religion on others? If God had willed, He would have made all inhabitants of the earth believe. So the fact that there is diversity, the fact that people believe and don't believe in this religion is because this is the way God has wanted it to be. Because religious freedom is a divinely given right. Another verse of the Quran speaks about this. Surah 18, verse number 29. And say, the truth is from your Lord, so whoever desires may believe, and whoever desires may deny. Here again the Quran says very categorically, whoever wants to believe in it may believe. Whoever doesn't want to believe in it doesn't need to believe. Another verse of the Quran, I'm going to quote now. When Allah says, لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينُ, which is one of the final chapters of the Quran, where God talks about how to engage with non-Muslims. As a Muslim, how are we supposed to engage with non-Muslims? And the chapter, by the way, is titled the chapter on the non-believers. Surah Al-Kafirun, the chapter on the Kafirun. And it says clearly in it, Lakum dinukum waliyadin. It concludes by this important rule, Lakum dinukum, you have your faith, waliyadin, and we have our faith. Which means that the Quran acknowledges that people should have the freedom to choose whatever they want to believe in. And there is no compulsion in faith. And when people choose, at the end of the day, you just say, Lakum dinukum, well, you have your faith, you have your ideology, and I have my ideology. Again, this whole idea of death penalty for apostates. You pick up the Quran, from Al-Hamd to Wan-Nas, from the first chapter, all the way up to the last chapter, the final chapter. There is not a single verse in the Quran where it states that those that reject Islam, become apostates, after having believed in it, they must be killed. In fact, interestingly, a notable critic of Islam, Sam Harris, he also admits that, interestingly, the penalty for apostasy isn't mentioned in the Quran. So when we talk about the primary source of Islamic teachings, apostasy, the death penalty to it, it is not mentioned in the Quran. However, then the question comes, why is it that then, in the history, we do find people having been killed because apparently they were becoming apostates. Apparently they became rejectors of Islam. The reality is, and I'm going to mention that later on when I discuss the hadith, I'm going to talk about hadith, which is during the Prophet's time, what happened. See, I'm now just talking because I want, rather than talking and mixing things up and making it confusing, I just want to talk now about what does the Quran say. And the next part I'm going to talk about what happened in the time of the Prophet Muhammad and his companions. How did they, for example, deal with people that did not believe in, or they believed in Islam and later on they became apostates. I'm going to give all those details, and it is important for us to understand that in the Quran there is no death penalty for those that wish to leave Islam if they want. And indeed, people have been killed, as I've said. But the reason was not because they became apostates. If you look deeply into this and you understand why certain people have been killed, it was not because they became apostates. It was another reason. And whatever that reason was, I'm going to give you certain examples of the Prophet's life where he did not at all punish people that left Islam. And there was no punishment after his life when he passed away given by those that became rulers. And I'm going to give those examples later on. Thank you very much.
Just to remind you, this is our last slot of 15 minutes each. So we have a 5-minute break.
Is it? Well, if it
Oh, 50. Oh, wow.
Could I ask everybody back to their seats, please?
It's okay? Can't hear you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At least my brother agrees that this is not an Islamic greeting only, as it appeared from the beginning of his speech. It is at least agreed that it's an Abrahamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum. We have come to that conclusion. Now about blasphemy. Why am I discussing blasphemy? Because he mentioned Al-Azhar University. I knew that he would come up with Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar University, in fact, referring to the apostates that make you leave Islam. Like Moroccan government has also issued fatwa. You can leave. But what you cannot do, you cannot go on and criticize it later on. That means if you do criticize, that's another whole new ball game. And I will come to that. I will explain to you in shortly how it is that. So now I knew, and before he even said, I think you remember I said he will quote Surah 3, he will quote Surah 2, which he did. But Surah 2 was Surah Baqarah, and we'll all agree that soon after coming to Medina, Muhammad was faced with the Jewish and the Christian community, and he had to sober up, and he had to say that, all those words about you even follow your religion, you go to heaven. And yet there is no compulsion to religion. He mentioned, as a record of the video should show, this is one of the last surahs. Lakum dinukum waliya din. I believe you heard of that, didn't you?
Yeah.
You heard of that. That lakum dinukum waliya din. Give me a second, I will find my paper where I'll show you something. That was something very nice. Here. You can read all that?
No.
Okay, it's the chronological order of the Quran. Yeah? One of the last surahs of Surah Kafirun. I think you heard that. If you didn't hear that, rewind the video. Alright. Surah Kafirun. Okay. It is 109 of the 114 surahs. And my dear brother here said very swift, what? He said one of the last surahs. Is that correct? Lakum dunikum walikin?
Yeah.
But no. I think being an Islamic scholar, he shouldn't have got that wrong. Overwhelming majority, mark my note, overwhelming majority of the Islamic scholars agree, according to Revelation timeline order, it is surah number 18, 1-8. Surah number 18, Revelation time, Meccan. So this is not one of the last surahs. So that's wrong. So we are going back to Surah 9, which is Surah 112 of, 113. So that is very clear, 113, so which is not abrogated so far. So 113 is the last surah which is in the Revelation timeline, and Surah 9 in the traditional order of the Quran. So this is Ayyuhal Kafirun, I beg your pardon, Lakum dinikum waliya. That's what he was mentioning to. Now let's go to the other issue that he raised. He didn't address yet Islamic State. I have to mention all that because I have the right to criticize. That's what I'm standing for here. Not only living, but also criticizing and going against it. And if I go against it, that is part of my life as an apostate from Islam. What is the discussion today? Is life of an apostate in Islam. I have the right to live. I have the right to wage war against it with my mouth. That's what I'm going to do. Because as this country believes in freedom of speech, and if I have to defeat an evil ideology, I will do it with my mouth. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to brandish sword. And about the war, he said primarily it's not a war of apostasy. That's what he said, which is wrong. The name of the surah is Ridda. Come on. War of apostasy. Battle of apostasy, whatever you want to call it. So this is not going to wash away that easily, my dear sir. It's not going to wash away. Now, going back to the Quran, if he was emphasizing much about Quran, I will go to Quran. I will go to Quran, I will address that issue. Now, apostasy punishment. But those who reject faith after they accepted it, and then go on adding to their defiance of faith, never will their repentance be accepted. For they are those who have of set purpose gone astray. Surah 3, verse 90. I'm going for Quran. And I don't think as a Muslim you need anything else, because the Quran claims it's self-sufficient. It doesn't need any more context, any more contextual mental gymnastics, because the Quran itself says so. I will prove it to you now why and how Quran itself says so. Quran, Surah 7, verse 185. I'll read it for you, my dear friends. Have they not looked at the dominion of the heavens and earth, and all the things God has created? Does it ever occur to them that at the end of their life may be near? Which hadiths beside the Quran do they believe in? Well, if you're coming to context, you are context, go for Surah, I will go for Surah. Now, Surah 31, verse 6. Among the people there are those who uphold baseless hadiths. That means statements. Here hadith refers to statements. And thus divert others from the path of God without knowledge and take it in vain. Though these have incurred a shameful retribution. A shameful retribution. We don't want taqiyya. I think we all know what is taqiyya. Now let's go for Quran, Surah 39, verse 23. God has revealed herein the best hadiths, that means the Quran. A book that is consistent and points out of both ways, and the heaven and hell. The schemes of those who reverence their Lord hinge them therefrom. Then their skins and their hearts soften up for God's message. Such is God's guidance. He bestows upon it whatever He wills. And for those they sent astray by God, nothing can guide them. And whatever is good, even if we like it or not, if Allah said it's good, you have to obey it. That's the Quran teaching. I guess Quran is Furqan, and I think what is right and what is wrong, Quran is the one to judge, not you and me, my dear friends. But if they repent, establish prayer, and give zakah, then they are your brothers in religion. But we detail in verses for people who know, and if they break their oaths that they are treaty, defame your religion, then fight the leaders of disbelief, for indeed there are no oaths sacred to them. Fight them for that they might cease. Surah 9, verse 11 and 12. Now, what about how am I being viewed? You know, in the terrorist Islamist food chain, I'm on the top. I'm on the top. Because according to Quran, and I would like my brother to give me that context, Surah 9, because I know the context fairly well. Surah 98, verse 6. Those who are non-Muslims are the worst creatures. They're hellbound. Worst creatures. And Allah punishes how? How does He punish? He punishes through His slaves. Through His slaves, He inflicts terror. That's what He does. So the best of His creations are the Muslims. Please. So give me a break here. So that's why I'm saying the life of an apostate here is an apostate who is viewed as the worst creature. That's giving me respect is not worthy. I'm not worthy of it. That's why this Belfast Islamic Center didn't even bother to respond to my email. Didn't even bother. Now, waging war of words. But on the other hand,
on the other hand. And it may be better that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you like a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows, but you do not know. Surah Baqarah, Surah Baqarah, verse 216. So my dear brother, he is a good human soul. He's good human soul because you are following humanity without even him understanding it. He's not following the Quran. But if he does follow the Quran, then I will say he's copycatting. Is he copycatting? Because copying word for word is not the Christian way. It is not the Christian way. Because how Muhammad used to eat, how Muhammad used to sleep, how he used to wear beard. You have pastors here, I think. And they're not wearing beard here. So how did Muhammad used to wear the shoe, how he used to have sex, how he used to brush his teeth, how he used to pray, how he used to stand up, how he used to smile. Everything is copied. And in Islam, a Muslim does not exist of his individuality. So that's the problem here. I'm being victim of copycat Muhammads. Because Muhammad, you can give me a sporadic example of what is this? I forgot. I can't remember the name. Ibn Abi Sar, yes. You can give me those kind of sporadic examples where he was the brother of another close companion of Muhammad. He was pardoned in a way. He was tolerated in a way. You can give me sporadic examples, but I will give you examples after examples after examples where poets were killed by Muhammad's instructions and using deceptions in the middle of the night. So I will take a whole different example in 90-minute slot to give out the name. So what about examples of recently? Taslima Nasreen cannot go back to her country. Bangladeshi famous writer. What about Salman Rushdie? You were talking about spitting on Quran. You found it offensive? You're spitting on Quran? But now, if you've seen the whole video, I don't think my dear brother has seen the whole video. At the end of the video, I said very categorically, the spitting, I can spit. It's my property according to law. I think my brother has law degrees as far as I remember. I have law degrees as well. We both know it's my property. I can buy the book and throw it to the bin. It's my right. But I made a point saying that I can do that legally, but it doesn't serve any purpose. I think end of the video, he didn't watch it. He couldn't take it anymore. But that's what I said. I can do it, but I don't do it because I don't find a reason to. I rather keep a copy of the Quran, copy of the Bible, copy of the Torah in my shelves, even Shakespeare, Richard Dawkins and everything. So that doesn't really serve a purpose. But what about you did? I want to see you condemn here the Salman Rushdie affair. That man wrote a book. He didn't spit on Quran. He is on the run for his life. How many writers are you going to say that who got killed for writing? So this doesn't really wash the arguments my dear brother is going to give you here. So Quran is self-sufficient, and about the hadiths, if you follow the hadiths, you will get things will get even worse. Muhammad was never a tolerant man. He, as I said, in Islam, Muslim individuality does not exist. You cannot think, you cannot question Surah 21, verse 23. Please, you cannot question. So you cannot question Allah. You can say, how can I question Allah? You can question Allah by questioning yourself. Is what Allah is saying ad verbatim, words of God? The Quran is an ad verbatim word of God. You said everybody have to believe in everyone. Bible readers here, you know why they are not violent anymore? If they are in the past? Because they have been taught rightly that rely on Jesus. You know what Jesus said? One, I tell you, love thy enemy, and one who persecutes you, pray for them. Give me a similar verse from the words of Muhammad. That's all I want. Give me one word of mouth from Muhammad when he said, love the enemy and pray for those who persecute you. I challenge my dear brother. So you cannot really compare. You cannot really compare. You cannot get away saying that, my dear brother. You cannot. Now, as far as the examples of persecution and laws, all the laws of the Muslim majority countries, you are talking about a few examples of Al-Azhar University. I told you what the problem is, Al-Azhar University. I will give you examples of Muslim nations. Saudi Arabia, I told you. Go there. Bangladesh, I showed you the map. All of them got it wrong. About apostasy, all of them got it wrong. My dear brother got it right. He should get a Nobel Prize for peace. That's all I can tell you. Because I didn't get it right for 33 years. I failed because Islamic jurisprudence doesn't withstand the arguments that I'm giving here. Go on, prove me wrong. That's all I want. So I wanted to see as an example here again, challenging again with the end of this talk, that Islamic State, one thing that it did, has no basis, singular no basis in Islam. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. My brother talked about Islamic State and said that, tell me about Islamic State. Well, Islamic State, there's nothing Islamic about it. Muslims refer to it as Daesh. Daesh means those that trample upon the tradition, those that trample upon the teachings of Islam. As Muslims, we do not call them ISIS, we call them Daesh. So therefore, it's important to note that Daesh has been refuted, has been on numerous occasions, we as Muslims have distanced ourselves from Daesh. In regards to the Prophet's examples, let me give you a few examples. You know, the Prophet praying. The Prophet, and that is the tradition of the Prophet that I just followed, to give another person when he's thirsty drink.
And it's a tradition that to say thank you as well from
Thank you very much. Great. And that's the great thing, that we have traditions, we have examples in our traditions, in our customs, in our ideologies that are commendable, that are positive. Why don't we focus on those? Prophet Muhammad, as I said, he was, when he propagated Islam, he faced a lot of persecution. In fact, the persecution went to this extent that many of his early followers had to migrate to the city of, to the region called Abyssinia. And they were given refuge by a Christian king, Negus. And the Prophet Muhammad, when he sent these people to Abyssinia, he said, go to that place that is Ardu Sidqin wa huwa Adn. This is the place of the truth. It was a country ruled by a Christian ruler, and the Prophet Muhammad referred to it the Ardu Sidqin, the land of the truth. So the Prophet Muhammad's companions were persecuted, but before that, he himself, he went to Taif, and he was physically assaulted. And after this physical assault, our hadith tells us, the books tell us that he quotes that he was asked by the angel to condemn the people that had abused him and to send God's wrath to them. In return, the Prophet Muhammad said, no, inni bu'istu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq. God has sent me to show a good example. God has sent me as a mercy. So therefore, I will not ask you, O angel, to condemn them. I will not ask you to send God's wrath. In fact, I pray for them. And I pray that if they don't listen to me, that's fine. But some of their generations, future children, will listen to it. Quran clearly, which is the example that the Prophet follows, says, and teach people. Tell people about the way of your Lord with wisdom and with a kind word, with a word of kindness, compassion. The Prophet Muhammad, one of his titles is Rahmatul lil Alameen. As Muslims, we look up to him. We believe that he is in fact Rahmatul lil Alameen, which means the mercy to all, mercy to everyone. In his life, we find the example when he took over Mecca. The conquest of Mecca, Fath al-Makkah, is an extreme great example of the tolerance and acceptance of the Prophet Muhammad, that he returned to Mecca after having faced persecution with an army of thousands, and he said, and the people in Mecca expected him to kill everyone, but in fact he said, Al-Yawm Yawm Rahmah, today's day is the day of mercy for all. My friend says, what about the Quran? The Quran cannot be understood. Quran should be understood without context. I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree. No scripture, let alone the Quran, no scripture should be understood without context. The Quran, specifically, categorically, there is a whole science dedicated to this subject. How to understand the Quran. How to understand the verse of the Quran. This science is known as Asul Tafsir, the principles of exegesis. How do you understand the Quran? And one of the basic principles of the Quran is that you do not follow it literally. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he has commanded the people not to follow it literally, but to understand it. And the Quran, as my friend said, was not revealed at once, but it was revealed gradually. And the need for that was because of the context. How do we understand the Quran? The Muslims, when we look at the Quran, we look at this particular verse contradict another verse? What about the prophetic statements in regards to that? All these things are taken into consideration before we come to a conclusion. We cannot just simply pick and choose. The hadith are the prophetic traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. We find, for example, that a person, there's an authentic hadith in Bukhari, a Bedouin, he embraced Islam, but later he cancelled his pledge of allegiance, yet there was no punishment applied to him. We find another example of Ubaidullah bin Jash, who left Islam and a companion of the Prophet, and no punishment was applied on him. This is not a matter of taqiyya, by the way. Taqiyya is something that Muslims that are from the Shia background would believe and adhere to. I am a Sunni Muslim. There is no such thing as taqiyya. What I say is what I believe. In the hadith, we find certainly certain statements that are problematic. We find, for example, a statement where it says that whoever changes his religion, then فَقْتُلُوهُ مَنْ بَدَّلَ دِينَهُ فَقْتُلُوهُ, who changes his religion, kill him. But Muslim scholars have never understood this hadith literally, and they don't understand hadith literally. There are principles of hadith, which is another science, by the way, which is asul hadith, which Muslim scholars learn to understand the meaning of the hadith and the objective behind the hadith. This hadith, the Hanafi scholars, for example, strictly they disregard this hadith. Even though it is mentioned in a book which is known as a very authentic book in terms of its narration, we simply reject it because it goes against, it is contrary to the basic fundamental divine right given in the Quran, which is religious freedom. When we look at the companions of the Prophet, how did they treat, for example, we find certainly examples, like in the Prophet's time, where people were killed, yes, but there is an agreement, unanimous agreement by scholars. The reason why these people were given the death penalty was not because they chose to leave Islam, not at all. The reason why these people were given the death penalty was because al-mufariqun al-jama'ah, which means that these people, they left the state and they committed something that is now known as treason. And the death penalty was applied because of that, and therefore we find, for example, certain people, they left Islam, there was nothing done about it, they were just left alone. But there were certain people who left Islam, but there was a death penalty given to them. But the scholars unanimously agree it was not because they had left Islam, they became apostates, it was because they in fact engaged in treason. The examples from the hadith, we find Umer, one of the companions of the Prophet, under his rulership, there were a group of people, the Muslims, they went to southern Iran, and there they met people that had left Islam. They became Muslims initially, and then they left Islam. And he asked them, Umar asked them, what did you do with them? This is an authentic hadith. In Imam Malik, one of the great scholars of hadith, narrates this. And they then told him, well, we approached them and we killed them. So, upon hearing this, the leader of the Muslims, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he then responds by raising his hands and saying, Allahumma inni lam ahdaru wa lam amru wa lam arda idha balaghni. He says, Oh God, I wasn't present at that time. I did not command and I was not pleased when I heard this. So he distances himself from this act. And we find for example, various different scholars throughout the history of Islam that disagree. Imam As-Sawri, which is a hadith scholar, he, for example, says that an apostate should be re-invited to Islam, but should never be condemned to death. Imam Shamsuddin As-Sarakhsi, who is a Hanafi scholar, prominent Hanafi jurist, and author of a book, Al-Mabsut, one of the textbooks of Hanafi jurisprudence, he says that renunciation of the faith and conversion to disbelief is admittedly the greatest of offenses, yet it is a matter between man and his creator, and its punishment is postponed to the day of judgment, which means that it's up to God to decide what to do with him. My friend was giving various verses of the Quran. Not a single verse did he come up where it says, as Muslims you have to kill him, the person deserves to be killed by people. No. All these verses are merely saying that there is punishment in the hereafter. And that is exactly what Imam Sarakhsi says. Another Imam Ibn Hammam al-Hanafi says, who is an eminent scholar, he says there is no punishment for the act of apostasy, for its punishment is greater than that with God. Ladies and gentlemen, can I just be reminded how many minutes I have left, Sylvia? 3. I'm going to give you another example. Imam Abdul Razzaq, one of the great scholars of hadith, again, says that people that leave Islam should not be punished at all. This is you can say the various different scholars throughout history have had this position. This is not myself who, according to you, should deserve the peace prize. No, all these people, the majority of the Muslim scholarship throughout history has understood Islam to be a religion where there is no compulsion, people are free to choose. And therefore, Muslims have ruled, ladies and gentlemen, they have ruled India, the modern day India, Pakistan, for 5-6 centuries. 5 to 6 centuries, and Bangladesh was part of that. They've ruled those lands, but yet, despite having ruled those lands for 6 centuries, Hinduism is still there. Hindus are still there. If Islam was a religion of violence, and if Islam said everybody has to be killed, Hinduism would not survive. Similarly, there are Christians, Jews, Yazidis living in peace for many, many centuries in Syria, in Morocco. If Islam was, in fact, in Iran, I visited Tehran and I met a parliamentarian, a Jewish parliamentarian in Tehran. If Islam was really a religion where apostates have to be killed, people, there is no religious freedom at all, surely these people, these communities would not have survived. Yes, under ISIS rule, there have been killed, they have been persecuted. But do you know, the Muslim scholars came together in Morocco 2 years ago because of ISIS, and they came together, more than 300 most influential scholars, and they came together and they issued a declaration known as the Declaration, Marrakesh Declaration. You can Google it up. And in this declaration, they condemned in the strongest words this persecution, and they said, we need to find out how can we stop people from perversion of faith. At the same time, there are certain countries, I'm not going to mention which countries, I think everybody knows them, that have a death penalty on those that are apostates. Believe me, Muslim scholars, like a great prominent scholar called Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya, has been, and many others, have been promoting, have been propagating for an Islam that is really reflecting the essence of this religion by saying these penalties are all political. They have no religious, theological background, and therefore we do not believe that they should be killed. So I think it is important to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that Muslims do not agree that all apostates should be killed. My brother is living in Belfast. There's so many Muslims here. I mean, I don't think any Muslim is really bothered, you know, when it comes to you. There is no, seriously, believe me, when they come in, those in Belfast I spoke to, they really don't care about you. You know, they don't, whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, simply, yes, you have faced abuse. You have faced abuse on the hands of people around the world. But believe me, your career as a political activist in Bangladesh must be, everybody must know that there is another side of this story. My friend, my brother is a known political activist. People have grievances with him because of his political affiliation, and they justify religion. They also, along with other things, to put their anger on him. But I say, I do not agree with those statements. I do not agree. I've shaken his hand. I've met him, and I'm sitting here. I'm having a dialogue with him, and I hope that all of us can do so. I hope that when we go back from here, we understand, yes, we may not agree with each other's ideology, but what we can agree on is that we should all live together, and we should be able to coexist in this society. Thank you very much, and I will continue in the next few minutes and give you certain other examples from the Islamic history. Thank you very much.
Okay, so both our speakers welcome questions from the audience now.
I have a question. Now, you said, like in your videos, you know, that you spit on the Quran and all these things. I can even send you Quran, you can spit on it. I am a Muslim myself. But does it mean, do you think that doing this will change the love of Quran in the hearts of billions of Muslims? Spitting will not make any change.
Are you making a statement or a question?
Yeah, no, I'm just
I think you didn't hear my statement a few minutes ago where I said categorically that even my brother probably, or you even probably didn't listen to the end of the video. I said categorically, I do not support or find any reasoning behind burning, spitting on any book. because I'm a bookish man, I always read. So I said the main purpose will be to do arguments and debates, and I was the one to call for this dialogue.
But you use the F word.
So I think we should not go for rhetoric.
You use some word, you use F words.
No, listen. When you say I use F word, I also said it was at the heat of the moment because we have grudges. And when we are facing machetes, and you sometimes use the F word, that's rhetoric. That's like a spirit of the moment. I'm not proud of it.
Because look, we are discussing that.
I'm not proud of it.
But
Now, what do you understand here?
You are insulting.
I mean,
different between
there's
discussion and
nothing as
insulting.
insulting a religion. There's nothing as insulting an ideology. What is religion to you is simply an ideology to me. So you cannot insult an ideology by doing anything. So that's what I believe in. So again I said, I'm making it clear again. First of all, I do not believe in spitting on any book. Even if you do, I made that clear. The whole purpose of the video was this, and that is the problem we always face. You see half of it, you don't see the end of it because you cannot tolerate the end of it. If you did, you should have heard I said at the end of the video. The main purpose of this, Muslims are doing it around the world. Salman Rushdie's book was burned in every part of the world.
They don't represent me. They can't do this.
But then 90% of the Muslims don't represent you, you represent yourself.
ISIS don't represent Islam.
Oh, well, I asked, I think
ISIS was made.
Are we going to have a debate with you? If you want to take the dice, I will debate with you right now.
ISIS was made.
Do you want to debate? Do you want to debate?
Intelligence.
Do you
want to blaming us Muslims?
Do you want to have a debate with me on this?
And they are
do you want to have a
Muslim.
debate with me right now on this?
I'm sorry, this question.
Yeah, can you put a time on the question, please?
Yes.
Yeah. If you want to debate on this, I will do it.
The gentleman in the green in the back.
First of all, Mufassil does not represent Christianity. So certain comments he made tonight could be challenged. He doesn't, or neither does the Pope represent Christianity or the Archbishop. There was a teacher and a scholar of the Bible who, a number of years ago, made the comment about religious conflict across the earth. And he made the comment that even the Christians in Ireland are killing each other. And my response to him was, you got it so wrong. Christians do not kill each other. If they do, then they are not Christians.
Beautiful.
They'll do that. 2 years ago, a pastor here in this city made a comment that offended Islam and Muslims. Words we know sometimes do offend, but the comment offended him, or offended the leader of Islam here. The leader of Islam was the main witness against him in court because of words that were spoken. But the same leader of Islam publicly stated that Mosul is the most peaceful city on earth, thanks to ISIS. He did not say Daesh, he said ISIS. He found that words more offensive than the massacre of people in his own city. That's what Christians here in this country, that's what we see. Why then don't Islamic leaders publicly stand up, not only condemn the violence of ISIS in a public way so that we all hear it, but why doesn't Islamic leaders, or don't Islamic leaders in this country publicly state that there is no death threat against this man for having left it?
Thank you very much. As far as Pastor James McConnell is concerned, because I believe you're referring to him and his remarks, I have met him in Westover. I have had an engagement with him. I think what you forgot to mention, sir, is that while there was a witness against him who was a Muslim leader, there was at the same time a Muslim leader who came all the way from London to defend him, and his name is Muhammad Hussein. Sheikh Muhammad Hussein defended him and said that the court case was absolutely, it was not needed at all. It was a waste of time. So I think it is important to understand that there are Muslims like those that were witness against him, but also those that stood with him at the same time. I believe that Muslims should be more appalled absolutely, at the atrocities committed by ISIS, then they are appalled at, for example, comments that they find offensive. I am with you on that. I agree with you. And that is one of the things that Muslim leaders, many of us, are telling our people, are educating our people. When it comes to Daesh, ISIS, many Muslims have actually spoken against them. Many Muslim leaders have written, refuted them. There is a fatwa by one of my prominent teachers, fatwa against terrorism. It's called Fatwa Against Terrorism, about 700 pages long book, where he has condemned this ideology, condemned militant Islamist extremism. And another Sheikh Yaqubi, has also written a book, Fatwa Against ISIS. I think it is important to understand that many Muslims, unfortunately, they don't get the same media attention because they don't create sensation than those that are extremists get. And I think it is important for the media to give proportionate media attention when it comes to reporting extremism and religious motivated violence. Lastly, in terms of this particular Imam, I'm not aware of this Imam, I don't know him, but I would say one thing, that I would ask Northern Ireland Muslim leaders to categorically state that they do not want Mufassil Islam to be killed, because they believe that Mufassil has his right to believe in whatever he wants to believe. I'll do my best, and I am sure.
And preach against.
And you can preach against any religion, against Christianity, against Judaism, but there is a difference between inciting hatred. There's a difference between criticizing and inciting. It's a very thin line, but it has to be. That difference has to be made.
So
because I don't think that Christians will appreciate. Sorry, sir. I don't think Christians will appreciate, and many Christian leaders will appreciate, if you pick up the Bible and you spit on it and you do a YouTube video, and ultimately at the end you say, it doesn't matter what I do with it because I've bought it. I do not think that you'd have Christian leaders then to say,
any Christian will not get offended if I talk about Jesus, will you?
Would you be okay with him spitting on the Quran?
I think you're going back on rhetoric. I said that many times. I do not believe in that any purpose will be served by spitting or burning, and I made it very clear in the end of the video. That's why I did it.
But
Muslims do it around the world.
But you've done so.
I said it for Muslims. That was the purpose to show.
Sir,
that was the purpose to show, because the burning books, burning, you're killing.
I think we exhausted
religions.
this question
Okay.
already.
All right,
Can we welcome another one?
I'll just preface it by saying I'm neither a Christian nor a Muslim, but the one thing that I believe in before all else is the right of free speech of anybody.
Yes.
Now, you have quite eloquently said that you support that, but what you did say was, as long as it doesn't cause disharmony. Sometimes you have to speak out. Sometimes you have to not worry about causing disharmony. Otherwise, wrongs don't get righted. Now, I only met you yesterday. I didn't know your story, but it is typical of what is happening under the surface all the time in society. Not just with Islam, but with terrorism in general. We've had our share of terrorism here. Terrorism still going on. People who speak out about it are accused of putting the peace process at risk. I remember when back in the sort of 70s and 80s, when there was a major terrorist massacre of the first thing everybody said was, nobody must say anything that would make the situation worse. And so, before all religion, before all belief, etc., everybody must give everybody else the right to speak freely. Not to advocate violence or killing anybody or anything, but to speak freely. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I think
there's a fundamental difference in right to speech or free speech and right to insult. You know, it doesn't serve any purpose. You don't have a right to insult. If you have a
Jesus Christ was buried on stage and the rest of
Nobody was murdered or killed.
Sir, can I make a point, please? Can I make a point? There is no need to write. There is no right to insult. There is no need for it. If you have valid, excuse me please. Excuse me please. Excuse me please. We can talk afterwards. Excuse me please.
Let him speak. Let him speak.
You have the right to insult, honestly.
You, if you can articulate, do it nicely. Tell about it. You are a scholar, you said, didn't you? How many years of, you said you're a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Do lawyers spit on books? That's very silly.
I think you are speaking the same thing.
I haven't finished my question.
Is it harassment?
I haven't finished my question.
Is it harassment?
Just one more second.
The same
If you
thing
can
happened
articulate a point, if you can articulate a point, do that.
I will do that,
you know,
right now.
Please.
I'll do that right now. I'll do that right now. Most of the Jews are treacherous people except a few. Your Quran.
Sorry, whatever you
Most
have
of
to say.
the Jews are treacherous people except a few. Your Quran. So is it articulated? Surah Fatiha, end of this, is condemning Christian and Jews. Is it articulated?
Look, Quran articulates perfectly very well.
It does.
So does it beautiful language and both
what
people non-Muslims accept that it is one of the best literary works.
It is.
I'm sorry, but this
is. You are asking me a question, I will answer. You cannot.
I haven't finished my question. I haven't finished my question. I was just making a point here that you are actually insulting. There is no need for it. You can always articulate your point. Secondly, you said that
you are going on rhetorics. I'm talking
about your discussion, please.
You
said,
please, this is a very sensitive question, and I understand.
Exactly. Let me ask the question, please.
You are making statement. You question. Give me a question.
Okay.
You're making a statement. I don't have advice here. For that, we have Dr. Umer Qadri here. So you are not here to make a statement. You have a question. Ask that.
I have a question.
Okay, go on.
You know, in your statement, you said, "Lakum dinukum" was the ayah which was during the time of Mecca. You know, and he was in Mecca. Rasulullah was in Mecca.
Yes.
And he made this ayah was revealed at that time.
Yes.
And you said, of course, he was weak, and it was.
Do you know the context?
Yeah.
Do you know the context?
Excuse me, please. Let me finish the question. Yeah. You said he was weak and he was Mecca, and he had to say that. And then you came about and you mentioned another ayah, and you said Rasulullah was in Medina, and there were Jews in Medina, and then he had to appease them. Why would he need to appease anybody in Medina? He was the king of Medina.
No, he was not.
He was the king. He was in charge of Medina.
No, he was.
But there was absolute nonsense.
No.
And not a lot of things you mentioned.
We're wrong.
Another thing you said. You said
Quran
every line.
I'm answering you. Let me answer.
Every line in Quran.
Let me answer.
You said every line.
Let me answer.
This was the last question.
You go on questioning. You said about coming to Medina about Surah 2, right? You don't know the context of Surah 2. Surah 2 was revealed soon after coming to Medina.
Can you say the ayah? Can you read it, please? What's the ayah?
So,
what's the ayah?
No, you just.
Can you tell the ayah?
You just said.
You said you're a scholar. You said you're a scholar. Can you read the ayah for me? Arabic ayah. Tell me the Arabic.
You see the temper here.
I'm sorry.
Tell me the Arabic. What's the ayah?
I told you.
What is the ayah? You said you're a scholar. What is the ayah? Tell me the ayah. Tell me the Arabic.
Can I pause?
Can Adam speak? Maybe he'll talk.
Thank you.
I want the Arabic.
You cannot control 10 people. How can you control 1.8 billion?
You don't need to control us.
Can you please tell us the ayah? Ayah of the Quran in Arabic? In Arabic, please.
Yes, I will. If you come to debate, come on.
In Arabic, please.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I finished with this question. Thank you. The
You are
gentleman.
not a scholar.
Thank you.
Video
Around the Muslim world, the Arabs, countries as well, but mostly, if I'm right, I think I'm right, a lot of Arab countries are Muslim populated. Do they believe, would you believe that Israel has a right to exist?
That's a
The
question.
That's a question.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Before I answer the question, can I just say that this is a discussion, and you say that you cannot control 10 people. Well, my brother is one, but you have none other Muslims that are really, listening with patience and tolerance. Why are you not mentioning that? It's important to mention this. Secondly, in regards to, what the Quran says about Christians, I can quote you. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ, and I can do that with the Arabic text. Quran says among the Christians, among the believers, believing Muslim, Christians and Jews and Sabians are people that believe in God and people that do good.
This is Surah Al-Ma'idah. Surah Al-Ma'idah.
Women, please. And for them there will be reward in the hereafter. The Quran speaks about Christians and Jews in a very positive way also. I think it's important to contextualize. Can I just answer the question about Israel? I believe strongly, and I am very vocal about this, I believe that the Palestinians and Israelis both should sit around the table and both have the right to exist.
Yes.
I believe both have the right to exist. I believe that it is wrong to give one particular community only the right to exist. I believe it is important that we should give equality and we should believe in equality, and both should have the right to exist. And this whole pick and choose game is also the reason why the conflict has never been solved. Sorry, excuse me, I'm talking, please, sorry, I'm talking. No, sorry, please. You can ask a question when it's your turn. Please. I believe both have the right to exist. Again, this is not our topic, and I understand that a lot of things are motivating your questions, but let us please stick on the topic. Thank you.
I'm going to try and ask you, my name is Jordan Stewart, by the way. I'm going to try and ask a question on apostasy. It seems to me that as Muslims, you're able to be here freely without the threat of death. But yet a person here in the West who has actually, with other prime examples of Salman Rushdie, where there was Islamic states who actually put out death threats against him. There was marches all across Iran, even in London, for his death, for people calling for his death. I would say that Islam has a little bit of an image problem in that case. So, as with all religions, enlightenment needs to happen. We need to, I think, revise and change them through time to make sure that they fit with modern society. What do you propose, and your fellow imams propose to do to change this about Islam? And thank you for coming to the debate, by the way.
Thank you. Can I just correct you first that it wasn't the Islamic State that has called for the death of...
I didn't say Islamic State, okay, I said Islamic states.
Okay, states. Okay, that even is wrong, because there was no state except one, it wasn't even the state, it was the religious spiritual leader of Iran, Khomeini, who issued a death penalty against Salman Rushdie. But at the same time, the question about the death penalty of Salman Rushdie was asked to Sheikh Al-Azhar, and Sheikh Al-Azhar replied by saying that we do not agree with it. We don't agree with his death penalty. The issue of Salman Rushdie became quite prominent, as you rightly mentioned, and there were a lot of marches throughout the Muslim world of anger, and I believe that...
Throughout the Western world too, actually.
Sorry?
Throughout the Western world.
Throughout the Western world, absolutely. And I believe when I review this, I believe strongly, and not only myself, many Muslim leaders believe that response was absolutely wrong. There was no need to actually even respond to it, and let alone burning the certain verses in Bradford, for example. But again, we have to understand much of it has to do with culture, because in Bradford, where the book certain verses was burnt, it was burnt by people that came from South Asia, and there it is quite common when you disagree with someone, you would burn the flag, for example. But here in the West, and even among certain Arab countries, it is not the custom.
May I ask you where you class as South Asia? Because Asia's...
Pakistan, India.
Yes,
Pakistan, India. And I believe that it was wrong. I mean, many Muslim leaders do not agree, like myself, with the death penalty. I mean, he's written a book and he's committed blasphemy. That's it. Let God deal with him. Who are we to, why should we even be bothered? What are we Muslims doing about it? That's your question.
Yes.
Muslim leaders, imams, shuyukh, around the world, they are coming together to ensure that Muslims get that enlightenment. And I agree that we do need that enlightenment. But when we say enlightenment, what we need, what kind of enlightenment should we have? You know, because of course there's an enlightenment era of the Christianity, of the Christians. What kind of reform does Islam need? The reform that Islam requires is to ensure that we go back to the tradition, early tradition of Islam.
What?
The early, let me speak, please. The early tradition of Islam. And when I say the early tradition of Islam, how Islam was very pluralist, how it, for example, allowed for people having different religions, different ideas, and still people lived. The great example of pluralism is the state of Medina. When someone referred to the Prophet Muhammad as the king of Medina, what happened was the Prophet Muhammad was in fact the head of the state of Medina. And there have been various different studies done by schools of theology in the West, where they have agreed upon that the Medina, the state of Medina, was in fact a pluralist state, which means that people, whether they were Jews, Christians and Muslims or other beliefs, they were all able to live together in peace. And I think that the enlightenment we need is to go back to our tradition. And again, in terms of human rights, we need to understand Islam. And this is the thing, that even Islam has flexibility when it comes to its rulings. There is a concept called ijtihad, which is to have legislation and rulings from Quran and Sunnah, inspired from the Quran, but make them flexible and to address the needs of the time. For example, what was the need of the time, and to make sure that these rulings, and I'll give you one example. Maqasid al-Sharia, one of the biggest objectives of Islam is, for example, the protection of faith. One of the biggest objectives of the objective of Sharia is to protect this faith. In that term, previously in history, certain people, they said, well, we are going to protect, like other religions, they protected their religion by anyone that would commit treason, anyone that would leave this religion, there used to be a death penalty. And they adopted that. In those days, it was, it worked, kind of. It worked that it kind of protected in the early time, that the religion. However, if you look at it now, and if you say, well, there should be a death penalty because someone leaves Islam, you're not going to protect religion. It's going to damage. I mean, even any person with common sense will say, in this day and age, if you have to kill someone because he changes his faith, something wrong with that ideology. So therefore, you have to adopt these rulings. And this is something that a lot of scholars are actually now writing about, and they are promoting these ideas. And at the forefront is the great institute of Al-Azhar. And I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge their role in this. And I think, well, I'm not going to go further. Yes.
Okay, right, thank you very much. First of all, Islam is against reformation. Yes, you cannot change the Quran. Simple as that. You have to believe it verbatim. Secondly, my brother is here wrong when he said only South Asian people went on protesting and burning. We know Khomeini, who declared the death and fatwa of death sentence against Salman Rushdie. He was not South Asian. And as far as troublemaking is concerned, I think the Danish garden created trouble, havoc around the Muslim world. We also know what happened to the American ambassador to Libya, how he was killed. His American embassy was attacked because of somebody did something in some other part of the world. And as far as my brother here was mentioning, in fact, Surah Ma'idah, as far as I recall, when he said about, there are people among the Christian and Jews who were tolerant, who were not proud, and all that. And that verse, as I said, was replaced, that cannot be accepted anymore because of Muhammad's expeditions later on, after his life even continued, basically the Byzantinians and all that, they were Christians. And Muslims are confused about, they were the people of the book and all that. But if you read Surah 9, verse 28, 29, and all that will make it very clear that Christians and Jews and the pagans are all the same. You go expedition against them. But otherwise you will not take up sword against the Byzantinians. They were Christians. So there is no tolerance in that religion. There is no space for division. He spoke about Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar, in fact, I remember it categorically, very clearly. When it came to Salman Rushdie affair, they called for Salman Rushdi's, trial. They didn't forgive them. They said about apostasy now. My brother is, I think, Minhaj University, as far as I recall, he went to, which is affiliated to Al-Azhar University. That's why he often refers to Al-Azhar University, because I did a bit of research on him as well. So Al-Azhar University, in fact, talks apostasy, but doesn't talk about if anyone goes and criticizes the religion like I am doing it. So that's the confusion is. So these are all, as I said at the beginning, three. One is you just live, second you convert, third you criticize. So those are the three aspects. They always use these, the loopholes to criticize and all. So in Islam, apostasy still remains, blasphemy still remains, and criticism still remains. I think that was the last question, was it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment, not a question.
You cannot make a comment.
Brother, I mean, you are just giving such a negative image. I'm speaking as a...
If you make a statement, I have to make a statement.
I'm making a quick statement then. That
Then I have to ask
I'm
someone else
born
to
and
make a
bred in Belfast. I became a Muslim. I am an attendee at one of the other mosques. I can't speak on behalf of Belfast Islamic Centre, but through your, as you named yourself an apostate, God's my witness, I'm not calling you a non-believer, you're calling yourself that. You attended through your state of apostasy at the Northern Ireland Muslim Family Association Mosque and prayed shoulder by shoulder with Muslims.
Sorry, say that again?
You have prayed in a mosque in Belfast.
Yes.
With no negative reaction.
I was not an apostate then.
You have been recently in the past year.
Yeah.
Brian,
No, not since I left Islam. No.
Well,
How can I go and
I
pray?
also want to say that I've had previous interaction with you,
Mm.
and the gentleman over here, I'm guessing Christian, well, speaking kindly on behalf of Christians, mentioned how words can be hurtful and harmful. The approach of a person to another person.
When you are getting death sentences,
No, no.
when you are
What
getting
I'm
death
saying-
sentence
no, I'm
every
not
single
gonna
day.
say
No,
sentence.
when you are getting
I
death,
experienced
when
you
this
as
video, which is
hostile.
going live now, which is going live now, right now, you are getting death sentence against me right now in dozens. Am I right?
Yeah.
Am I right? Can you stand very much there? When this video is getting death sentence right now for having this dialogue, how can you expect me to keep anyone?
They don't represent us. They don't represent
Well, of course, it's always that 10 is not going to represent.
I would like to
Okay, I think
be
it's fine.
this the last conclusion and the last question. Thank you everyone for attending. I think first of all a round of applause for our speakers.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
And
It was a pleasure.
just before we all depart, I would like to make one or two concluding remarks. Thank you so much everybody for attending, for your patience, and I know the topic of Islam and in this case apostasy is very close to your hearts, and therefore I appreciate that, as we got passionate, it's a passion for a reason, because we want to live next to one another in peace and make this community in Belfast, but not only, but also on an island, fruitful and peaceful. And our speakers deserve our respect, because it's very difficult for both of them to be here and to speak about this very vulnerable and important subject. So again, round of applause, and I hope this is just the beginning of a fruitful dialogue about Islam. Thank you so much.